Greetings folks from another year and another season. Today I've got for you a garage update for the channel. This is our new 2016 Scion FR-S. I bought it with just 59,000 kilometers on it, and I've gotten it up to 66,000 now, just crossed over into the 66,000 range. Today I'm going to go on a little bit of a drive with you guys in this, and we're going to discuss our plans for the channel and our plans for our vehicles.
Alright, so some of you may have seen on the channel, I've uploaded some shorts just giving small updates as to what I've done with the Civic so far. I have put a D16 Y8 intake manifold in EM1 on our D17A1. I was originally planning on swapping a D16 Y8 head as well onto the D17A1. However, I've now found out, or the D-Series community actually I should say, has now found out that the D17A head flows better than the D16 heads. So I'm going to stick to D17A heads. However, I'm going to swap for a VTEC head, and then I'm going to swap for the 1.6, the D16's valve train, specifically the D16 Z6. And then I'm going to swap in some aftermarket cams from Rocket Motorsports, get it dyno tuned on Shell 93 octane, hopefully get the compression up to 12.5 to 1, thereabouts. At first, I may use Civic GX pistons, just to make it easy, and then after that maybe custom internals, get it bored out to 1.8 liters of displacement, and then use larger pistons at that increased bore, along with some stronger connecting rods, and if I can, get those custom connecting rods with D16 rod bearings at the bottom, because the high performance ones for the D17 aren't really available. So if I could get some custom rods made with the D17 wrist pin but a D16 rod bearing, that would be ideal. So that's what I'm going for. The crank is already forged from factory, so it won't need anything there. And that's our plans for the Civic. Our 89 CRX Si that we've just got, that is a restoration project. We're keeping that completely original as it is, well, right now. It's got all original wheels, it's even got the original floor mats. Just needs a thorough detail, which we will be doing. And I bought it with a blown head gasket, so we're going to be fixing that as well. Right now we're on our way to go see the Civic, because it's been a little while, and I'm going to let you know what we've done to it in the meantime, because it hasn't just been the intake manifold, it's also sitting on new coils, and I've done a few things with the sound system. So, I'll catch you then.
Alright, and here she is. I don't know if I got a clear shot of the rear of the car originally in the previous videos, but there used to be a big honking dent right here and right here. That has since been fixed and completely repainted, along with this is a new taillight, and I believe this one's a new taillight as well, actually. I got rear-ended in a parking lot, and so the other guy's insurance covered that, and that's been wonderful. Got a new rear bumper that's got fresh paint on it as well, because they had to match that with the paint on the rest of the car. So we're looking pretty minty fresh from the rear. Now we just gotta make the rest of the car match. So this car, when I first got it, already had 200,000 kilometers on it. Previous owner, I suppose, didn't love it that much, so now I've got to extend some love to it to make up for that lack of love it got from the previous owner. It's always had this big gash in the front bumper that's been a bit of an eyesore to me, along with millions of little rock chips. So I think this probably won't buff out, so I'm going to replace the front bumper. I'm going to keep it OEM though. I don't like how the hybrid ones really look, even though it might get a little bit less drag, and Acura EL front bumpers, they look awesome. I think they're pointier and more aggressive, but I really love this car the way it sits. It was my first car when I bought it, and I'm attached to the way it looks, so I'm not gonna Acura EL front end swap it even though I could. The hood, I'm not sure about what we can do about those paint chips because they are pretty rough. Some of them do go pretty deep. I might end up just getting a new hood, maybe even a carbon fiber hood, and then getting it painted to match the rest of the car because I don't like that obnoxious teenager aesthetic of having mix and match colors, like a carbon fiber hood that's black but the rest of the car be silver, or a trunk that's carbon fiber and black but the rest of the car is silver, or both. I don't like the idea of that. For rims, I've thought about many different variations, different sizes. Right now, these are just the ugly winter ones. The summers are off in the shed, but I'm thinking I'm gonna put Honda S2000 rims on it. However, those are staggered in size. Those are typically 16 by 7.5 in the rear and then 16 by 6.5 in the front. However, if I'm going to be putting them on this car, I'm going to need to perform a 5-lug conversion first, obviously. I wanted to stagger them in reverse because this is a front wheel drive car, not a rear wheel drive car. So I want the 16 by 7.5 inch S2000 wheels on the front, paired with some maybe 225 section 50 aspect ratio tires up front, Michelin Pilot Sports, to match what I have on the FR-S. And then on the rear with the 16 by 6.5 inch rims, I wanted some 205/55 tires, also Michelin Pilot Sports, to maintain the same tire diameter front and rear, but to have a bit more meat up front. That should also counteract some of the understeer that the car naturally has in having a 60/40 weight distribution. The car is also on new coilovers now, which I will insert some pictures of for the installation of because I didn't film that. And they have new spring rates. Previously, the Max Peating Rods coilovers were 10 kilograms per millimeter in the front and 6 in the rear, which induces a lot of understeer at the limit. It's certainly better than stock, and it handled pretty good. It was pretty planted. But now they are 8 kilograms per millimeter front and 10 in the rear. A whole lot stiffer in the rear. That should help the car rotate along with the meatier tires up front, skinnier in the rear. That should also keep a lower rolling resistance in the rear, allowing us to take off quicker and leave anyone else behind, especially those other K-swapped EM2s that have 225 section, 235, 245 section tires all around. That's just a whole lot of rolling resistance, especially when you pair that with 17-inch rims, and I think it's tasteless. So we're going to avoid that. In the previous video, I may not have shown these because I think I had the plastic rear deck lid on, but these are our 5-way Kenwood 6x9s that are on the rear deck. They work pretty good. I also ended up getting the amplifier wired in along with our Dayton Audio DSP, and I found out the Dayton Audio DSP was pretty shit. It had a whole lot of interference, and I don't like that. I also figured out that the amplifier that I chose specifically, I'd have to do some screwery with the wiring in order to make all the drivers work, because obviously I have a 3-way setup up front, and then the 6x9s in the rear, and then I also wanted a sub. So there was a lot of things I could have done. I could have got a separate amp for the sub, but now I'm thinking, heck, instead of just buying a new DSP, one that maybe won't have the interference, maybe I could get an amp that has an integrated DSP and all the channels I need for the whole system, so I won't need multiple amps and all that garbage. So I'm going to simplify the sound system in this, and then I've decided, instead of using the massive 12-inch subwoofer that I bought for it, the GR Research sub, I think I'm actually going to put a 10-inch in here just so it fits better. Maybe even just a Kenwood to match the rest of the system. A self-powered one even might be easiest. For modifications on the FR-S, we're going to keep that pretty plain in stock, partially because I've already allocated a lot of funds into the purchasing of this vehicle, which has slowed down the development on the build of the EM2. Also because it's a very minty, fresh, low mileage example, and I don't want to screw around with it too much and lower the value. So I think the absolute most I'm going to do is maybe put some Bilstein B6 shocks in it with some RCE yellow springs. That'll lower it very moderately at about 3/4 of an inch, and it'll give me the same spring rates front and rear instead of the rear bias spring rates that it comes with from factory. That makes it a little bit skittish on the limit and oversteer happy. with the same spring rates front and rear. It'll be a little bit less skittish and more predictable, and that's what we're going for. And better ride, better body motion control. All in all, I just want the car to be more planted, and I figured I've already done coilovers in this Civic. I put coilovers in my cousin's 8th gen Civic Si as well. We've done coilovers before. I think it's time for some Bilsteins, especially in this, if we're going to be keeping it minty fresh looking and all original. Because eventually I would like to put collector plates on it as well. But I might put a shorter final drive in it at the very least, like a 4.8 final drive. I have thought about that. And here she is, the CRX of the 1989 model year, which means it's 100 pounds more than the 88 model year with the added crash protection. But it doesn't have the rear disc brakes that the 90 and 91 model years have. So I'm going to swap in the rear trailing arms from the 90 and 91 so that I can have those disc brakes on the rear because, well, since it has that added weight, why not? As you can see, original wheels, even with the original center caps. Unfortunately, bump strips damaged. I've already ordered one, however, it needs more than one. Inside, original seats. Side bolstering needs to be fixed, but that's no problem. Original floor mats, but I've covered them with all seasons so that I don't damage them any further. Haven't made much progress on this car in the past while as we've been busier. This actually just became the car that we come out to smoke in Hotbox. So this has been the Hotbox hot hatch for the last year or so. But now we've finally started pulling the head off of it. And here, I'll show you what it looks like now. So we got the bottom end covered up so that the cylinder walls and such won't go rusty and corrode from, well, the obvious moisture of this fall season and all this rain we're getting. So we just put some plastic material there, some wood on top of it, and filled up the cylinder walls, just all of it, just with a bunch of old oil to keep it all lubricated so that it isn't exposed to the elements. And yes, of course, we had to take the intake manifold off to get the head off. We had to detach the exhaust manifold as well. And the head is over here. It looks pretty nasty. Yes, this is what, about 34, 35 years of carbon buildup looks like without a rebuild or anything like that. Again, all original. Here's the valve cover, the head gasket. Oh yeah, I bought all new stuff for it, all new gaskets. And honestly, since I'm planning on keeping it and again putting collector plates on it, I'm thinking screw it, since we already have the head off. Let's pull the motor and just rebuild it because I want to have this in the family for a long time. As with the Civic, so I think the Civic, I'm going to end up pulling the motor out of that as well and rebuilding that so that I can end up having myself 3 fresh cars. I got the low mileage FR-S, and then if I rebuild the engine in the CRX and my Civic, then they should be good for many, many, many more miles and years to come. So that's the plan. And as you can see there, only 105,812 miles, which equates to about 170,000 kilometers Canadian. So this ZRX from 1989 actually has less mileage on it than my 2003 Honda Civic Coupé. Needs a little bit of work, needs a little bit of loving, but it's going to be a very, very fresh, clean example that I'm going to be taking to multiple car shows and meets throughout the years, and I'm going to keep this in the family for a long time. This one actually didn't come with a stereo receiver. It wasn't optioned with it from factory. Door panel's off here. You can see it even has the mounting point for where a speaker would be, covered up by foam, and there's no speaker there. It hasn't been removed, it just wasn't optioned with it. Just another interesting fact about this car. And here's a bit of a surprise. In the future, again, if we're not too busy and we can get around to it, these need restoration. I mean, a town car might need a little bit more because they've been using it as a parts vehicle. We have another town car, a white one, a Cartier, which is the trim above this one, and they've been pulling parts off of it and using it as a parts car. But I would like to see this restored as well eventually because I have a lot of childhood memories in this car. We even drove it down to Disneyland and Las Vegas when I was a kid. This was like our winter vehicle, winter beater when I was a kid. for a very brief period, and I really want to see some new life breathed into this as well. And it could be interesting with modifications as well, because even though it's got like a old 5.2 liter Dodge engine in it and it's carbureted, the aftermarket is still pretty existent for it. Like, I could use all Mopar parts, I could use Edelbrock parts, I could use anything, and I could swap heads, get a higher flow carburetor, higher compression pistons, all that nice stuff. I think we could get like 250, 300 horsepower out of this thing. Although obviously if we're going to do that, I'd like to put the larger and wider Diplomat police wheels on it, and then we can put some wider tires on it maybe, because right now it's on 195s, I believe. Yeah, putting 250, 300 horsepower down through 195 is going to be a little difficult. This is what she looks like under the hood, all original as she sits, which also, actually, now that I think about it, makes me feel a little bit bad about the planned modifications, because it would be nice to have maybe a third collector vehicle once the FR-S is old enough and has collector plates on it, and the CRX has collector plates on it. Maybe we could put collector plates on this if we just decide to keep it all original. Maybe even just repaint it in the brown color that it was originally, get the chrome redone. Or you could rat rod it. You could modify the engine and just clear coat over the paint as it sits. And yeah, the interior's in good shape. All original there too. Although it's been taken over by spiders, they are frickin' everywhere. As you can see, there's a big web right there. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna close that. So that's gonna be gross to clean out, and I'm gonna need to wear like a frickin' hazmat suit because I'm an arachnophobe. But other than that, yeah, we got a lot of fun projects planned in the future. I might be a little bit slow with content, especially because of the Canadian economy and my limited funding resources, because, you know, I'm not freaking rich, even though I make it look like it with all these vehicles. So if you're willing to stick around, I don't know for how long, in the coming years, we got some fun projects planned if you're willing to stick around for it. So if you want to, I'll be here for it. Thank you. I'll catch you in the next one.